Hey, it's Susan Ortolano here, relationship and marriage coach. And unfortunately, I'm not coming in live today. So I wanted to make this video because I'm still wanting to talk about the invisible marriage killers. And this is part two. Part one is in the featured area. If you stumble upon it or want to go look at it, I save all the lives and videos that I make in that area. So first thing I always like to do is do a card message. And generally these messages, this is from a different deck called the Soul Compass deck by Amber Annette. And generally is made more for, I think this deck is made more for women than men, but I want to draw from it. It just sort of called to me today. I'm not drawing. I have one called the Goddess deck. I think that one's more for women, but this one, we'll see what comes up. So this is a message that I like to interpret for your marriage and what you need to be working on right now. And the card is follow your intuition. And, we all have something inside of us. Not everybody has highly developed intuition, but we all have some kind of inner sense about something, whether it's an insight, some kind of intuitive hit. You may have your intuition well developed so that you get information and you're very conscious of the fact that you get intuitive information about yourself. But this is about taking time to really listen inside. We just get so busy and we constantly kind of try to look outside for answers for everything. And sometimes, the intuition will tell you what next step to take, or your intuition will give you a hit about something you need to do, something you need to work on. And so it's really about looking inward. It's one of the things I teach people to do is really listen inward to what your intuition is saying. And so that is the message. And hey, it's as much for me as it is for you. And how you can apply it to your marriage is sometimes in marriages you have, and we're going to be talking about today, one of the invisible marriage killers, where you have a perception or a point of view about something, and it's coming from a different place than your intuition. And the perception, and we're going to talk about it, the perception is actually not even accurate. And your intuition is saying one thing, but what you think you're seeing, your perception of something is saying something else because your perception is based on something else. So I'm going to definitely get into that. And this card really, really goes well with the invisible marriage killer that I'm going to talk about. Number two is called your belief system. And I know you've likely heard all about limiting beliefs, false beliefs, all that kind of stuff, but they're there and they live at a subconscious level. Some of them you might be aware of if you've actually done some work on them. A lot of things you just don't know what you don't know, and they live at a subconscious level. So sometimes it's really hard to access, but you may be wondering why there's so much conflict, why your perception is not accurate, why you're getting triggered all the time, why you shut down with somebody. There's something going on at sometimes a more hidden level that is moving you into feeling a particular way or perceiving something in an inaccurate way. And that's the space you're coming from when you respond. So it really does lead to resentment and anger and blame and yelling because we get triggered. Somebody says X, our perception is that they said Y, Z, A, B, C, D, and that was a trigger point that hurt us. And then we respond based on not our intuition, but we respond based on an inaccurate perception that comes from a limiting belief. So if you're walking around a belief that with a belief that you've carried since the days of yore, meaning since you were like 4 or 5 years old, that says somewhere I'm not enough, then something happens, somebody says something, even if it's like a crappy thing your partner did or whatever, and you just go into responding, not necessarily from what they're saying, but from the perception that you feel I'm not enough. And the other one I've actually worked with a few couples where this happened, where somebody, again, dishes. I don't know why dishes are a big thing or chores in the house, but apparently they are. where somebody did not get the dishes done. This was a woman who asked her husband repeatedly to get the dishes done, and he would agree to it. And then the next day, sometimes 2 days, she would see the dishes not done. There was a dishwasher as well. See the dishes not done, she would get really upset about it. And when we dove into what it was really about, her true perception of it, that false belief was that she didn't matter to him. She wasn't important enough to him. She didn't matter enough to him for him to actually do what he said he was going to do. Now, is that true? And we're going to go into a little exercise that can help, just a little tiny exercise that can help kind of flush some of this stuff out. It takes a little bit to really get these limiting beliefs out of your system so that they don't interfere in your marriage. And they also can interfere in other areas of your life too, but they really interfere in your marriage. And if you don't get into these root core issues, these beliefs, then it's really hard to repair anything, because if you keep trying to repair it, and that's why if you've ever seen one of my Facebook ads go out, it'll say like date nights don't work. Date nights aren't going to save a marriage. Going to that tango class, trying to do more things together, trying to amp up the romance don't work. And I know that's sort of controversial, but here's why. It's because you're trying to fix it on the surface, like here, when the actual issue is here. And a lot of people don't know how to dig deep enough to have these real things at the root come forward, and they don't know how to really release them. And of course, that's what I teach. But part of why a lot of these things happen, and it's like the response can be a very emotional response. It could be that quick reaction. It could be the shutdown. It can be the flight, fight, flight, freeze, flee. Somebody could just like walk away because something hurt them and they think it was the thing on the surface, but it's not. It's hitting that limiting belief that they may not be aware of, that may be sitting at a subconscious level. And it's an invisible marriage killer, because if you never get to it, you're never going to get through it. If you don't get to what lives at the root level, then it doesn't matter how many damn tango classes you take, or how often you have sex, or trying to repair it, or, how often you go out to eat, you're still going to be, that thing's still going to be sitting there. Do you know what I mean? That belief, that perception is still, that story is still going to be sitting there, and nothing sweet, pretty, and fun vacation, whatever, is going to solve it. You may have a good time going to dance class or cooking class or whatever you do to try to fix it. You may have a great time going on that 2-week vacation to the Bahamas, but when you get back, that belief is still there, and things are just going to go right back to where they were. And you're going to get back into the shutdown, the yelling, the blame, the the resentment, all those stuff, because if you don't clip it at the root, it's not going to fix anything. So if you have like a garden of weeds and you pull a weed, but you're not going deep enough, the weed's going to grow back. And that's what I'm talking about. And that is what I call an invisible marriage killer, because too much of that, you'll think, oh my gosh, I can't be with this person anymore. I can't take it anymore. I'm walking on eggshells in my own home. There's constant disrespect. I feel disrespected. I feel like my partner's shutting down on me. And I just don't know how to fix it. And that's part of why sometimes people will get divorced over a lot of these things. And then somebody might do something really underhanded or sneaky without saying something, where they're going to go spend, X amount of thousands of dollars, where there's an agreement that says if we spend more than X amount of dollars, we talk to each other first on something frivolous. Or they're going to kind of step out and check out to see who else is on the planet that they may be attracted to, because that's sort of a revenge thing. And we don't want there to be a revenge thing. We want, if something is repairable, fixable, we want to be able to fix it, and we have to do it at a root level. Otherwise, it's just going to keep coming up and coming up. And you've had this span of the same argument time and time again about the same stuff. And it's because you're never getting deep enough to really clear it at a root level. And if you don't clear it at a root level, again, you can't fix anything. And that romance and all that kind of stuff like that, if somebody's harboring resentment, I know they talk about makeup sex, but it's sort of like if somebody's still harboring resentment, that's not going to matter in the long. It may be great for the 5 minutes or half an hour or whatever it is, but it's sort of like it's not going to fix the problem kind of thing. So that's one of the things, you have to really look at and really consider when you're looking at your marriage. It's not just about, it always is about, we have to communicate better. I'm going to say that, but it's like, where are you coming from when you are communicating? This is one of the big things I teach, is sort of like, where are you coming from when you say what you're saying? And sometimes you say something mean or because you're triggered, because you're hurt, and you're coming from a place of hurt. And the reason you're coming from a place of hurt is because you're coming from a false belief system that's creating an emotional response where you think, oh my God, I can't believe my partner did this. I can't believe my spouse did that or said that. And then you just lash back out, or you flee, or you shut down and it's like zippity, not saying anything, and this and the pout. There's usually a pouter and there's usually a shouter. Someone wants to, and this was when we get into attachment styles, where it's like the anxious attachment person wants to fix it, and I can't be in this conflict. I can't exist without resolving this. Anxious, always wanting to kind of grab on and fix it now. The avoidant doesn't want to even talk about it. The person with avoidant attachment is sort of like, I got to pull back. Don't want to say anything, don't want to confront, don't want to talk about it, because they're coming from a place that when they did say something or when they did speak their mind, they got hurt in some way, or they came from a belief that you don't talk about things, or however, whether it's family of origin, whether it's school, whether it's wherever we pick up this stuff. And we pick up stuff mostly between the time we're born and age 7, but we can pick up things at other age stages as well that get into that really deep place, that sometimes that subconscious place, that underneath the iceberg where it's that big and all we can see is the tip of the iceberg. It's kind of like that. So this is again, a silent marriage killer. And this is what you need to fix the most. When you fix things at the root level, learning better communication skills, connecting, rekindling intimacy is going to be a whole lot better, a whole lot easier. And then, go on your date nights, go take that tango class, whatever, because you're not going to be holding on to something underneath that is negative or that is a false belief. You're going to actually feel really good about what you're doing and the time you're spending with your partner. So how do you even figure out? First, you have to have a level of awareness, meaning one of the ways you could have a level of awareness is to stop distracting yourself with so many things and spend some time in stillness. And in stillness is really uncomfortable for people to be in a quiet space or to just have some really nice, and I posted some little frequency music, have some soft music playing, be in a meditative state. Doesn't mean you have to do some guided meditation, although if you do, that's fantastic. But to just really sit in stillness. If you're a journaler, that's a good time, because writing is a great way to get information out. But anytime you can sit and just quiet yourself and just listen to the mind chatter, because the mind will chatter. The mind will tell you, oh, this must be the truth, or this must be the truth, or it must be this, and sort of and then you just be an observer and notice what the mind chatter is saying. It's like becoming mindful, conscious, and aware. It's like if you're so busy on your phone or distracting yourself, or you're working so many hours a day, or you're paying so much attention to the kids that you're neglecting yourself. Even when you have time, if you're commuting to work, if you have time in the car, don't turn on the music. yeah, pay attention to the road, but see what comes forward, because the information you need will start to come forward and it'll start leaving clues to what's really going on with you. So you have to have a level of awareness and mindfulness to even know how to, because the real key is to learn how to let go and release. And it's like, certainly I teach a technique on that, that you have to have an awareness of something, right? You have to be aware of how you operate, the model of the world, the way you see the world, the way you perceive things, and to actually look at that stuff rather than making it about the other person. Sure, the other person may have done something really crappy and you'll deal with that, but you also have to deal with how you're responding to it on an emotional level. Your belief system will lead you to the way that you respond with your emotional self. And if you don't learn how to do this, your marriage is in big trouble, because you're going to constantly do what we call projecting onto each other, meaning I'm projecting my crap onto this person when it's really my thing to deal with. Now, if somebody does something really heinous to you, sure, there are certain marriages and instances where there are grounds for dismissal. There's a deal breaker. But if you're doing, having we'll say the basic stuff that, or something that is negotiable, fixable, then it's really about getting to the root of the issue. Otherwise, your marriage is going to go further down the tubes because you're not getting to the real issue. And it really has to be, you can do it for yourself, and you can, inspire your partner to do it, or you can have both of you work on it, because you really have to become aware where if there's an argument, you're like, oh, that was my not feeling good enough thing that just came up. I really apologize for how I responded. And then you can clean it up really fast. So there is a woman, you may have heard of her. Her name's Byron Katie. And she does a lot of work on beliefs. And the first question to ask yourself is what I'm believing or what I'm perceiving actually true? Is it actually true? Again, it's a perception, but is it actually true? Yes or no? Can you absolutely know that it's true? Yes or no? Like, is there actual evidence? Like, if somebody put something in the freezer when it needed to be in the refrigerator and it got frozen and you got triggered by it, yeah, you got to deal with the trigger. But first of all, is it true that there was malicious intent behind it? That's something you have to ask yourself. And then, how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? Because a response is simply a thought. Your belief is a culmination of thoughts. So how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? So if you believe that somebody did something, and therefore, you get to the trigger, or you get to the, I'm not good enough, I'm not this enough, I don't matter, he thinks I'm an idiot, whatever it is, that's when you want to look at, how do you respond? Well, when I respond, if I feel he thinks I'm stupid or she thinks I'm a moron, then, you got to look at what emotions are coming up for you. Do you get angry? Do you get frustrated? Do you get, sad? Like, what are the emotions? And what images do you see in your mind? Because our mind, most people have the ability to imagine things. The mind will start imagining things. So what images are you seeing in your mind? And really, when you believe that thought, how do you treat yourself, and how do you treat your spouse when you believe that thought? If you believe you're not good enough or you're worthless, how are you treating yourself? How are you treating other people when you believe that thought? And then you go into the key question, who would I be without that thought? If you didn't have a thought at all that you weren't, I'm going to use the good enough thing, or worthless. If you didn't believe you were, and you might think, and Susan, no, I don't even think I'm not good enough. Keep checking. Everybody has it somewhere. But if you are responding from that place, and that is like the root issue, ask yourself, Who would you be without that thought? It's a pretty deep question. And these are things you can write down and work with, and then turn the thought around. What is the possible opposite of that thought? So if you have a thought about somebody else and they hurt me, they said this to me, I can't believe it, and you feel a particular way, what would be a turnaround that could be true or even truer in the situation? And think about it. What could be true or even truer in that situation? Because again, we're talking about false beliefs and the repetitive thinking and the response from something that happened or something that somebody said, your partner said. And then you go into all these limiting beliefs. And if you pick out one and you become aware and you ask yourself these questions, is it true? Can I absolutely know it is true? Yes, I'm reading them. How do I react? What happens when I believe that thought to be true? And then who would I be without that thought? And is there any other perception, thought that could be true or even truer than the one I'm thinking? And you'll be surprised at what that brings up for you into your level of awareness. Because if you don't bring stuff up, I mean, you don't have to get every thought you've ever had or every belief you've ever had since you were born. That's literally impossible. You have about 60 thoughts a day, so you're not going to get all of them, right? There are ways where you can really clear the limiting beliefs. That's the silent, invisible marriage killers in a much easier way. And of course, that's one of the things that I work with when I work with couples, because we don't just work on communication and rekindling intimacy, and those things are important, but we really can't get to that in any kind of conscious or enjoyable level until we get to the root of certain things and we clip them out. So that is what I wanted to share today. I hope you have a great weekend. And I know this was short today. I can't say when I'm going to be doing it. I'm going to be doing this 3-day training coming up. You'll get all the information you need. I'm going to be doing some paid advertising. So people are going to be coming in from different places, all that kind of stuff. And there's going to be some actual training, a little bit. It's like I did a little bit of something today, but it's going to be more than that because we're talking 3 days. And not 3 whole days, but, like an hour and 15 minutes each day. And there'll be an opportunity for people to go into kind of a VIP room, if you will, and on my Zoom room. And certainly it'll be broadcast into this Facebook group. But for those who decide to come into the Zoom room, there'll be some coaching, Q&A, all that kind of stuff about marriage and about your marriage. So I hope just the understanding that there are invisible things that are harming your marriage, and there is a way to work them through. There are ways to heal them. And honestly, for those who are like, but Susan, it's like my spouse did this and I could never let that go because it's a deal breaker, you're still going to want to clip the belief at the root, because otherwise, if you end up getting divorced and moving forward, you're just going to run into the same situation over and over again. And you don't want to do that to yourself in your marriage, in your career, with money, all this kind of stuff, because it goes across the board. So that is it for me for today on video. And I will leave my information because I do have some space open for select people who want to save and transform their marriage. And I'm very particular about who I work with. So we do have this discovery call, a consultation call, so I can get more information about you, because it's really important that I know if I can help you or not. And there are certain things that I do not work with. And so if somebody comes to me and they have one of those things that I don't work with, I am happy to be upfront and possibly refer them to some place where I know they can get help. But if I can work, then I may invite you to work with me. So I will leave that information, and there you go. Have a great weekend. And, weekends may be hard if you're in a marriage that is struggling. You just got to do your best for now. But I know that, some of the people who book these consultation or discovery calls with me are just really scared. It is scary to face what's going on in your marriage, and you may be feeling like, let me just stay in my comfort zone and hope it gets better. And it's like sometimes we get comfortable with the pain. So I'm inviting you to get out of the comfort zone and want better for yourself, want better for your marriage, and reach out to get help, because we're not trained to do this by ourselves. Like just trying harder. And I hear a couple, oh, we just tried harder. Oh yeah, doing the same thing. We read a book. That's fantastic, but the author didn't jump out and take you by the hand and help you implement. And if you aren't people who are super accountable, then you probably stopped implementing, and then you just say, oh yeah, that book didn't really do anything for us. So those are some of the, there are just things that don't really work well. I think books are great. I mean, I wrote one myself, but it was sort of a workbooky book, but still, unless somebody has me working with them, it's not going to be as effective. So that's it. We're still in Mercury retrograde. And so just be conscious of your communication in general, because in astrology, Mercury represents communication. Mercury goes into these retrograde or backwards periods 3 weeks at a time. And then there's like a shadow period. It's if you're not into astrology, it's probably a little complicated. Just be very mindful of your communication, your technology, how you're driving. Just be very mindful about all that stuff. It ends May 14th, and then you want to give it a few days afterwards, because it takes a minute for Mercury to start going station direct. And you may notice, if several times in a year, it's like, oh, the email's not working. Oh, I can't upload this, or my computer crashed. That happened to me one time during a Mercury retrograde. But communication with couples sometimes gets a little more tense. There's a little more arguing, taking things in the wrong way. That perception, the belief systems coming forward a little stronger. So just be mindful, just be conscious, and just know right now we have a Mercury retrograde. Doesn't mean we blame anything. I mean, I make jokes about that. Like, forgive me for everything I said during Mercury retrograde, but it's something you just want to be mindful of, especially certain signs that Mercury is very connected to. If you're a Virgo, Gemini, those are ruled by Mercury. If obviously, if I was doing a whole chart, I look at the wheel, which houses are more affected by Mercury. Mercury is going to be rolling through somewhere, going retrograde. So you may notice in one area of your life it just feels a little off right now, but it will end and it will go direct. And it's like, I really try to encourage people during these Mercury retrograde times to take the opportunity to, again, be more mindful and take the lesson that's coming with what's going on. So again, Susan Ortolano here. Hope you have a great weekend. Bye now.